Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
There you have it. You may remember that moment. That was Donald Trump for the first time on the campaign trail announcing a plan for what he called a temporary Muslim ban. Now, he later hedged on that language and adjusted it. On Friday, though, the president signed his first stab at this conversation. It was a now controversial executive order restricting entry to the United States by a range of categories. And this decision has set off waves of protests around the country. It's forced certain travelers who'd been in transit when the order went into effect into unexpected detention at a variety of airports across the United States. And it sent the Trump administration into spasms of clarifications. Tonight, the president releasing his statement, trying to reiterate that contrary to what we just played on the campaign, this is not a Muslim ban or an outgrowth of it. He says tonight, this is not about religion, this is about terror and keeping our country safe. There are over 40 different countries worldwide that are majority Muslim that are not affected by this order. We will again be issuing visas to all countries once we're sure we have reviewed and implemented the most secure policies over the next 90 days, end quote. Joining us now is Nayyera Haq, a former State Department spokesperson. What do you think of what we're seeing, and what is the significance of Donald Trump's past statements as a candidate to what he now claims he's not doing? He is basically saying, pay no attention to that guy who talked about banning Muslims in the primary.
I think what we're seeing is an administration that is really struggling to shift gears from politics to policymaking. I mean, having been in the room as decisions are made, and there's a discussion about how do you share this information with the American public and how do you implement it in a way that'll be effective. What we have seen this week goes against every common sense action that you should be taking. For example, Nora just reported out on a briefing to reporters on Background, which is administration officials who are experts talking about the how and why of doing something like this executive order. That should have been done 3 or 4 days ago so that the administration's perspective and story and questions and everything could be answered up front. That's helpful to inform the American public. Instead, what you had is a draft that was hastily put together, sent around to a handful of officials as the officials who are responsible for implementing it at the embassies on the ground. They were being let go. And another interesting aspect is the legal side of this. So there's the logistics, but there's the legal side of this, which is you're hearing justifications now of, we vetted this with Department of Justice, we vetted this with legal counsel. Well, they really didn't vet this with the people who are responsible for making the laws, which is Congress. And Congress has, in the last several years, been in an uproar over the use of executive orders as executive overreach. I mean, it is the president's job to execute the law of the land, but Congress is making the law of the land. So it'll be very interesting to see as members and senators return back to D.C. tomorrow how they handle this, that essentially their power as representatives of the people is being undermined.
Are you suggesting that even a tightening of immigration could have been better executed for some of these goals had it just gone through Congress and the agencies?
At least there's a the consent and consulting aspect of working within our branches of government, but certainly it would have been much easier to avoid last-minute court proceedings that required, say, in New York and Boston and Virginia, for judges to rule on the constitutionality of this and essentially stay the action. All of this could have been avoided if there had been
stay part of the action.
Right, stayed part of the action, but when you do have further legal challenges, a part of the executive order being challenged could lead to the entire executive order collapsing. Again, all of these are questions that should have been sorted out in advance, discussed, so we didn't have. There's really no need for the American public to have to be standing up for its rights and standing up for American values in this way in protests around the country. Had the White House actually planned this as better policy instead of just rushing to implement campaign promises.
Well, you're echoing something that ACLU Director Anthony Romero said on our broadcast tonight, that the haphazard and rushed way this was carried out on Friday was a gift to challengers of litigation. It's now guaranteed them an active court challenge and a partial victory already, and that was all based only on the airport chaos. It wasn't based on the underlying larger policy question, but now they're in court. They have standing. They have a procedural step of a federal judge pushing back on President Trump. And I don't know, you said you, of course, worked under the Obama White House. Can you think of any time a president has had a court brush back an order this early in their presidency, 1 week in?
1 week in, the day of. I mean, that's what's really remarkable about this, is it was such a poorly written order that you had Border Patrol officials not really knowing what they were meant to implement or not. For example, this entire issue of green card holders. When has that ever been a concern for terrorism? I mean, it's usually, we're talking, right? These are people who are legally in the U.S., who have been living here, who have gone through years of processing just to get that status, and they have to do checks. And there's all sorts of vetting that's already there. So the question becomes, why in the order it said immigrants, right? That you could stop immigrants. So that is a broad swath of people. What is a young guy who's at the Border Patrol, who's just responsible for checking that documents are real and what the history of the person is? How is he supposed to be interpreting that? No one knows. And so there's that logistical challenge, and there's a theoretical, now legal challenge of essentially undermining what Congress's responsibility is.
Right. I mean, look, we're out of time, but parts of the order were written as if someone had no working knowledge of immigration law or border security. That is the nicest factual way to put it, and we've seen the reaction to that. In particular, obviously, the Trump administration, as of tonight, doesn't feel they did it the right way if they had to reverse the way they were doing it on Saturday, a fast turnaround on legal residents, to say the least.
And they are spinning their wheels right now.
We're out of time. Nayyera Haq, thank you so much. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.